In a small town called Buju Town, there lived a woman named Amaka. She was the daughter of Ugo. Amaka was married to two men. Their names were Emmanuel and Ibuka. This is the story of how this unusual family came to be. It all began many years ago when Amaka was just a young lady. She was one of the most beautiful women in Buju. She fell in love with a young man named Emmanuel. He loved her too. Their love was so strong that everyone in the village was jealous of them. But there was a problem that threatened their love. Amaka was beautiful, but Emmanuel was just a poor farmer. Rich men from all over the village came to Amaka's father's house. They brought many expensive gifts. They all wanted to marry Amaka. But Amaka didn't care about their money or their gifts. She only had eyes for Emmanuel. She told everyone that Emmanuel was the only man she would ever marry. So Amaka and Emmanuel got married. Amaka moved into Emmanuel's small hut. They started living as husband and wife. After 3 years of marriage, they had a son named Chima. Amaka was also pregnant with their second child. But life was not easy for them. Emmanuel became poorer with each passing day. Sometimes they couldn't even eat one good meal a day. Amaka worked very hard on the farm to help her husband. But nothing changed. Her friends started to make fun of her. They said she was foolish to reject all those rich men just to marry poor Emmanuel. One day, when Amaka was 6 months pregnant with their second child, Emmanuel made a big decision. He decided to go to the city to find better work. He promised to come back for her and the children once he found a good job. Amaka was very sad about this, but she agreed because she wanted a better future for her family. So Emmanuel left his wife and son behind and went to look for a better life. Amaka continued working on her husband's farm to grow food for herself and her son. A few months later, while Emmanuel was away, Amaka gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, whom she named Choba. With Emmanuel gone, his uncle Tom claimed his land, leaving Amaka and her children with nothing. One of Amaka's friends, Amara, told her about the fish business, so she started working with fishermen at the river. She would help them gather fish. At the end of the day, they would give her a basket of fish. Amaka would sell the fish at the market and use the money to buy food for her children. The fish business didn't make much money, but at least Amaka and her children always had something to eat. 2 years passed, and Amaka didn't hear anything from her husband, Emmanuel. Even after having 2 children, Amaka was still very beautiful. Men started to chase after her again, but she turned them all away. She said she would wait for Emmanuel to return. Another year went by without any sign of Emmanuel. Amaka grew more worried each day that passed without hearing from him. One day, Amaka met a very rich man who came to the village from the city. His name was Ibuka. He fell in love with Amaka as soon as he saw her. But like with all the other men, Amaka told him she was waiting for her husband to return. Ibuka was different from the other men. He felt sorry for Amaka. He couldn't stand to see such a beautiful woman suffering so much. He told her he would take care of her and her children even if she wouldn't marry him. Ibuka started a fabric business for Amaka. He enrolled her children in good schools. He fixed up their house. He provided for all their needs. Within a year, Amaka became the biggest fabric seller in Buju town. Her business was doing very well. 5 years had passed since Emmanuel left for the city. Amaka still hadn't heard a single word from him. She began to lose hope that he would ever come back to her and their children. Ibuka had been very good to her all this time. After thinking about it for a long time, Amaka finally agreed to marry Ibuka. They had a grand wedding in the Buju. Ibuka was the happiest man that day. After the wedding, Ibuka asked Amaka to move to his house in town. But Amaka asked if they could stay in Emmanuel's house, which Ibuka had renovated for them. She said it was the only connection her children had to their father. Ibuka agreed to this. He accepted Amaka's children and treated them as his own. 3 months after marrying Ebuka, Amaka became pregnant. Ebuka was very happy about this. They continued to live peacefully together. When Amaka was about 8 months pregnant, something unexpected happened. She was sitting in the living room with her head resting on Ebuka's chest when they heard a loud knock at the door. When Amaka opened it, she was shocked by what she saw. It was Emmanuel, her first husband. He looked dirty and tired, like someone who had been living in the wilderness. Emmanuel was also surprised to see Amaka pregnant. It had been 6 years since he left. He couldn't understand how his wife could be pregnant. He was even more shocked when he saw Ebuka sitting comfortably in his house. Before Emmanuel could say anything, Amaka burst into tears. "You left me for 6 years, and I didn't hear a single word from you," she cried. Emmanuel explained that he had been working hard to make a good life for them. He had made some good money, but unfortunately, on his way back to the village, robbers attacked him. They took everything he had and left him with nothing. "So, after 6 years, you return with nothing?" Amaka asked. Her question made everyone silent. All this time, Ebuka sat quietly without saying a word. Amaka told Emmanuel everything that had happened while he was away. She told him how she and the children had suffered. She explained how Ebuka had helped them. She told him that she had given up waiting for him and had married Ebuka, who had been there for her when she needed help the most. Emmanuel sat there, shocked. He didn't know what to do or say. In their town, no woman had ever been married to 2 men at the same time. But here was Amaka, with 2 legal husbands. She had only one option, to divorce one of them. But which one? Ebuka was a kind man who had been good to her and her children. Plus, she was carrying his baby. Emmanuel was her first love and the father of her 2 children. Given his bad situation, she couldn't just divorce him and leave him on the street with nothing. And so, Amaka made a difficult decision. She would stay married to both men. The men agreed to this arrangement because they both loved Amaka deeply and wanted her to be happy. From that day on, Amaka lived with both husbands under one roof. At first, Emmanuel and Ebuka were very awkward and tense, but over time they developed a friendly relationship. They lived as brothers for the sake of Amaka and the children. Emmanuel and Ebuka worked together to provide for the family. Amaka later gave birth to another child, a boy named Obina. No one knew for sure which of the 2 men was the father, but it didn't matter, because both Emmanuel and Ebuka treated all 4 children equally as their own. Because of their unusual living situation, the family faced mockery and criticism from others in the village, but Amaka didn't care as long as her children were loved and well taken care of. Her 2 husbands always stood by her side, supporting and defending her choice. In time, the people of Buju town came to respect them. They admired Amaka for her courage in challenging society's rules for the well-being of herself and her children. They praised Emmanuel and Ebuka as memorable men who set aside their pride and jealousy to put their families first. When Amaka grew old and passed away, both Emmanuel and Ebuka were extremely sad at the loss of their beloved wife. They continued living together like brothers. They cared for Amaka's children and grandchildren until the end of their days. This is the story of Amaka, a woman who chose love and family over tradition. It's the story of Emmanuel and Ebuka, 2 men who chose kindness and cooperation over jealousy. And it's the story of a most unusual family that found happiness in their unique way. If you found this story interesting, kindly like